All right, we are live. Happy Easter, everybody. Easter weekend is here. I got my nice green fancy suit on. Hope everyone is having a wonderful spring. And I have something I wanted to cover. I wanted to cover it this weekend. I didn't want to wait till next. But it is this new NAR policy that has been passed about having sellers options, about posting their listing publicly on other websites. So we had a meeting this week with some of my agents, and I asked them about it, and they were kind of confused. And I know if they're confused with having as many meetings as we have at Ashmont Realty, I know you at home as an agent and a consumer is probably puzzled as well. So we're going to cover that in the most simplest forms possible, make it really dumbed down, just like how I like to present it. That's how I learn. And we're going to talk about that and a lot more right after this. Countdown.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, guys. Well, spring's here. The weather's turning out great in the state of Ohio, which means listings are coming up. So as everyone knows that everything, as you seeing signs getting stuck in the yard right now, all that business has been preparing for at least 3 months, like usually back in January. So as things are heating up, I'm getting a lot of questions, and I don't know if they're questions, just like in bewilder of this new NAR change about allowing sellers to choose what type of public advertising. So how it used to be was like this. You had a house and you listed it with the realtor. When the realtor put it on the MLS, it would syndicate to all these other websites such as realtor.com, which, believe it or not, the NAR, National Association of Realtors, do not own realtor.com. They don't own it. I know it says realtor.com, but they sold that a few years ago to an Australian company, so they don't own that. But it goes to there. It goes to Zillow, homes.com, Trulia, et cetera, right? Okay. That's how it's been for years. Okay. Now the NAR has came up with an option for sellers, saying sellers, we can list your property with a real estate agent. Okay. But, we're going to keep it we're not going to, if you want, seller, we're not going to send it to those other websites. Okay. Because we know many of our sellers, they might want some privacy. They might want to list their home, but make it private. Okay. Now, it still goes on the MLS, so other realtors know the house is for sale, but it doesn't go to those other websites. Okay. When I first heard that, I said, what's the motivation? It's been working well. And in my career, I've never had someone say, Adam, when you list my house, I want to make sure it doesn't go to all these other websites because I don't want those other websites to know I'm selling my house. It's been the complete opposite. Okay. They always say, hey, my house will be on Zillow, right? Or my house will be on realtor.com if I list with you, right? I've always had that. I've never had it the opposite. So anyone watching today, if you've had many clients that said, hey, if you list a house with me, I don't want it on Zillow.com or realtor.com. Okay. Put it in the description below if you've had many clients that said that, because that's what the NAR is saying. And I don't believe that. I don't. I've been doing this for 15 years, hundreds of transactions. I never had anyone really say that. I'm not saying there won't be somebody out there that doesn't want their stuff on those websites, but that it doesn't make sense to me. Okay. So what Zillow has done, they have came and say, really, you're not going to send those listings to us, huh? Okay. All right. Well, the data war is on, and that's what I'm calling this, the data war. And I'm going to kind of break down, some of the statistics, because we can all have feelings about things, but I want to know the hard facts, right? That's what makes sense. So with that being said, Zillow says, okay, all right. Yeah. If you don't want to do this, if you don't want to send your listings to us, because that's how Zillow stays in business. It's data. They get data from from the MLS. They put the information on Zillow.com and all those other sites. And then Zillow sell that data for lead gen to other agents. We'll talk about that later. Okay. So they said, I'll tell you what, Zillow says, I tell you what, MLS members, aka realtors, if you go this route and don't put these private listings on our website, if you ever change your mind, you can never post that listing on our sites again. So you better decide really quickly. Okay. So now it's a standoff, right? So with that being said, let's talk about data. Does this make sense? So if you're a realtor and have a client and you have to talk about, publicly listing it or keeping it internally, let's talk about the data. So we've had a lot of data about this already. So let's go over this. So some of the issues, some of the things that we're going to look at here is just some advisory questions or issues that people are going to have. So let's pull this up. So this is a something that sellers can should be reading. You should presenting this. Anyone can use this form. It's got the fair housing on it. But some of the issues that are rising out of this, and I'm agreeing with this form. One issue is just limited buyer exposure. Okay. If over 85% people, 85% guys of buyers, okay, this is a hard stat from the NAR, find their own home. The real estate agent doesn't find the house for them. They find their own home on websites such as Zillow and Realtor and Redfin. Okay. Now, if you list your home, this secret way, private way, those listings aren't going to go on those sites, which means most people aren't going to see that listing. Okay. So now the only way they're going to, be able to be found, these listings will be found, is the realtor's going to have to send it to the buyer now. Again, it's controlling the data. That's all it is. Okay. So that's the first issue. Next, let's see. Next issue is a financial risk. Less buyers competing against something. If you're selling, I don't care, a car, and you only have one buyer for the car, it's a buyer's market. They can, negotiate you down or what have you. Now, if you have 10 buyers for the same car, you might actually get more money than what it's worth. You have that. So less exposure means less buyer pool will be looking at your property. Okay. Which means you'll have less buyers to choose from, which means you probably won't have some sort of bidding war. It just doesn't make sense. And that's why I'm not a big fan of these auctions, because auctions, like one-day auctions, that if someone's sick, the weather's bad, and people forget, an auction gets you the best price at that given moment of who came to the auction. It's not the entire buyer pool of time. Okay. Longer time on market, less people, less eyeballs you have on, that's number 3. Less eyeballs you have looking at the property, less buyers looking at it. Statistically, it's going to be on market longer. So you can easily say those things. So let's talk about facts. Okay. So let's talk about facts. So let's jump into, so Zillow is the one that's kind of spearheaded this. So let's talk about, this is an article that Zillow came up with before this all happened. So let's read this. Okay, so this is on Zillow's website. Let me see. Okay, this is in February of this year. So like 2 months ago, right? Before this NAR stuff happened. So they're saying that off MLS homes. So these are homes that would be considered like in office listings, just within the company's listing. They're not on the MLS, which means they're not on Zillow. They're not on realtor.com. Zillow is saying there was sellers left more than $1 billion on the table the last 2 years, and homes sold for $5,000 less than if that seller posted it on all those websites. Okay. I agree with Zillow. I 100% agree with Zillow. So that's Zillow stats. If you don't have max exposure on a listing, you have less buyers looking at it, homes sit on market longer, and you're going to get less money for it. Okay. That's just stats. Now, let's take a look at another article. Bright MLS is one of the largest MLSs in the country. It might be number 2, and this covers it covers multiple. It's in the New England area. They came out with some statistics. Let me see what they said here. What's this? Bright. There we go. So now Bright, yeah, this is an MLS. They just came out this report this month, and they've been talking about pocket listings. Pocket listings refer to like listings that are like on the MLS, but they're not publicly known. When I say publicly known, I'm talking about what is being listed on the ML or the Zillow.com and Realtor.com. So here's their hard stats. So, between 2 to 4% of listings are kind of pocket listings, non-promoted on these other websites. So it's a small fraction. Now, the thing that I think it's interesting right here, I highlighting it there for you, 90% of those listings, guys. So 90% of those listings that were listed off site, off those public sites, 90% of them eventually went to full-blown listings, which means they didn't sell. Okay? Because there's not as many buyers looking for it. Okay? Less buyers' eyeballs, which means less people can see it, know about it, and you can actually get a competitive market. 90% of those listings went full-blown listing. So that means they weren't successful. So a small fraction of listings are treated privately right now, and 90% of them that were treated privately eventually went public listings. All right. So, you have to think about what's the whole premise. Well, the reason why, and this is the cold hard truth, guys, the reason why is the nice thing about having this stuff non-exclusive to, to Zillow, Realtor.com, it's to prevent them to get the data. It's to prevent them to get those listings from us that we're feeding them that keeps them alive. It's a way to slowly starve them. Okay, that's what it's doing. It's starving them of data, and you do it long enough, those websites will be irrelevant. Okay. It's like, when those in the old days, you would siege a town and you would cut off all the supply lines, the food and the goods supply lines to the forts and the castles. And eventually everyone started starving to death and they gave up. That's what they're doing. They're trying to. Okay. But the other issue is too, and most importantly, is if you're a broker, a real estate broker, so like at Ashmont Realty, if we're keeping those listings non-public and we're keeping them in-house or throwing them on the MLS, what we hope as real estate brokers is that we become what's called dual agent. Dual agent means there's one brokerage that has the listing, and since it's all kind of done in-house, then the real estate brokerage, Ashmont Realty, has the listing, and then an Ashmont Realty agent will find the buyer because it's all in-house. We keep all the data and information. No one knows about it, right? We're not sharing it to the public. And then we can get both sides of the commission. Because remember, if buyers agents, might get 2 or 3% in our market. Sellers agents usually get 2 to 3% of our market. It's all negotiable. Nothing is set in stone. But with that being said, is doing it this way, that significantly increases the chances that a single brokerage will, collect both sides of that transaction. Now, conclusion, it's not what's best for clients. It's just not. I love money, right? It's clients and make money and everyone's happy and keep the doors open. But guys, less exposure that you have on a property, less exposure in eyeballs you have on a property, less the odds of you getting the highest possible price for your seller is minimized, so much. Okay, because you need to make capitalism and fair markets work, is you got to have the most amount of buyers looking at one product, so you can find the right buyer that'll pay the most for it. That's just how it's always worked. And by restricting the data flow to get awareness out there, and to get more eyeballs on it, it doesn't help your seller. So I hope that it's not complicated. Remember, your seller statistically is not going to get the best deal. Your buyer probably will, because they're not going to be competing against other buyers. So with that being said, guys, if you think you want to get into real estate, right here below, right here, down here, Ashmont Realty is giving a 30% discount on your college tuition at Hondros College. Awesome college. I might even teach you. I'm an instructor there as well. So check it out. Spring is here. You can get your license as little as 2 weeks. They cut down the time. 2 weeks in the state of Ohio. That's ridiculous. 2 weeks of classes, you can have your real estate license. Thank you, guys. This is Adam Ashba, broker and president of Ashmont Realty and instructor at Hondros College. Happy Easter, everybody, and I will see you on the next podcast. Bye, everybody.